looking at the fourth voice that we've been listening to in this 4-part series on the voices that leaders hear. And I mentioned this painting that's Rembrandt of The Return of the Prodigal Son in the first session that we had. If you haven't had a chance to listen to that, I think that's really important that you do. And go back to the ones prior to this if you're just picking up this particular video and watching it, because it talks about how to listen to the voices in our lives and in our world. And this iconic painting that we'll unpack more today is a lot about the voice that we listen to, particularly that inner voice. That's the fourth voice. But the first voice, we talked about clients and customers and what we should listen to there, and how we discern what we pay attention to and what we don't. We talked about staff voices, how important those are, and the teams and employees that we work with. And then owner voices. Who are the owners of an organization? Who has clout? Who are the people that pull big strings by virtue of their influence, actual ownership, whatever? And how important it is to navigate the tension between ownership and those people and those of us in leadership, and how we engage owners. So this fourth voice is your inner voice, and failing to hear the inner voice or filtering it through fear and doubt is really tragic. Self-leadership requires self-trust in the inner voice. Now, you can't listen only to the inner voice. Some people seem to think that's all that matters. Whatever my voice tells me, I do. But the inner voice can be dangerous. Ignoring it is certainly fatal, but it can be dangerous if it's not influenced, if it's not shaped by the right kinds of things, people, stories, data, and so on. So the inner voice has to be informed by some outer voices or outer input. And those people would be mentors. I run to mentors a lot, people in different areas of expertise, and ask them, hey, I need some help. How do you think about this? What's your experience been with that? Experts, people that are just subject matter experts in the field that you're in and have done a part of the job or whatever really well for a long time, and others recognize it. Some of us have a faith orientation where we get our philosophy of life from. And so that voice of faith and the input you get there. Others of you have other kinds of spiritual beliefs or a philosophy of life that you've cultivated. Listen to that. Pay attention to that. That will inform that inner voice. Your core values and what you believe informs the inner voice. What you read, what you watch, who you talk to, where you spend your time, all those things, speak into the inner voice. Now, me, I can rush a decision. I can ignore both sometimes outer voices and inner voices, thinking I've got the answer and how could I possibly be wrong? But that inner voice of wisdom will speak and say, have you consulted your trusted voices? Have you listened to wise people? Have you revisited your values and beliefs and talked to peers and people you trust? The inner voice can be wrong. And don't blindly follow it. And as I said, don't ignore it. But it'll be better, and increasingly better, if you've got good outside input coming into the voice. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I told this story before, I think in another post, so forgive me if it's redundant for you, but it's so iconic. We interviewed in an organization I was in a person as a potential employee, and he had had some trouble getting to the airport, and this was a time period where, it was pre-COVID, and it just seemed like we had to reschedule this interview a number of times for all kinds of reasons. And one time was kind of this big deal where he said, somebody put some sand in my gas tank. I couldn't drive my car. I couldn't get to the airport. I couldn't fly over to get to you guys and have the face-to-face interview. And I'm really sorry. And we were like, wow, we got to help this guy make this work. At some point, all these things are obstacles in his life. One of the people in the room said, something's fishy here. I don't know what it is. I can't quite put my finger on, but my gut tells me something's wrong. And she'd been around for a while. She'd heard a lot of stories and seen a lot of things. And while 7 or 8 of us were kind of like, doesn't look like a bad deal for me. It's just the guy's had some real bumps he's had to overcome. Yeah, I don't know. Something's goofy here. Well, make a long story short, it turns out that he had some, and he's a great person, but he had some, mental health challenges. He had some incredible stress in his life. And what he did was finally call and tell us and say, I got to be truthful with you. Yes, I couldn't get to the airport because someone put sand in my gas tank. And I was that someone. We were like, what? And he said, I needed to sabotage this so that I could truthfully say, this problem kept me from doing, this. But he said, I'm sorry, I'm just under all kinds of stress in my life right now, and the last thing I need to do is be looking for a new job. We appreciated his honesty and his truthfulness, but it was clear that he was going to take some next steps and get some help. But the key of the whole thing isn't the nature of the story was, it's that the person listened to their voice. That there's something in them from all their experience and wisdom and learning and being around good people and seeing a lot of situations was able to say, my sense here, my nose for truth is sort of, finding that we're off kilter here. We're not aligned. So what voices are you listening to, or ignoring, or afraid of, or rejecting, or seeking? Pay attention and cultivate them. Now, in the story of the prodigal son, of course, he's run away. He discovers he's done wrong. He's offended his father. He turns around after sitting in a mud pit filled with pig slop, and that's what he's eating now. And he has spent money and time and energy on all things negative. And he comes to his senses and comes home, or he heads home. He expects to find a father that rejects him, that punishes him. And instead, and the story that's told in happens to be, I think I mentioned this earlier, Jesus tells the story. The father's finds him with open arms. He runs out to greet him and says, I love you, and let's put a new robe on you, and let's get you cleaned up. If you look closely at the picture that Rembrandt has drawn, the son is all in tattered shoes and clothes, and he's disheveled. His head is shaven. He's just a mess. And the father hugs him and throws a robe around him and says, let's have a feast. Let's have a party. There's another voice, though, in the story. It's the voice of the brother who's been around, stayed around, didn't run off and squander the inheritance. And he says, Dad, basically, the guy blew it all. He dishonored you. He comes back. You throw a party. I've been here all along. I've been faithful. I've been following you. And the father says, Son, I've always loved you, and I care for you, and I honor you. But I'm giving my attention now to this one who was lost and now is found. And it's really important that we see the difference there in the voices that are controlling all of these people. The prodigal thinks he's going to be, his inner voice tells him, you will be punished. You're not worth anything. The other son's voice says, you're the best, and that if you follow the rules, everything will always work out and go your way, and you're better if you always follow the rules, and don't give any thought or compassion to someone else. It's kind of he's got a warped kind of thinking about some things. He should be jumping up and down that his brother's back. He's not. He's critical. But the father's voice is such a wonderful voice. It's a loving, restorative, caring, reconciling voice. And I think it's really important. They seem to me to be pictures of the voices we see in our leadership and in our world. Voices that cultivate and encourage and reconcile and bring together and bring hope back to broken people that have blown it or screwed up. You'll work with people who are filled with shame and guilt, who don't believe they're worth anything. They're trying hard, but inside they think, I'm a loser. And you've got to speak the voice of hope into them. And then there are people that are kind of cocky, people that think they're deserving, people that think they're the best, people that kind of hold themselves above others. And you got to sit down with some of them and speak some truth too and say, hey, we're a team. It can't be about you here. It's about all of us. So listen to your voices, inner voices, outer voices. Listen to the voices in your leadership and in your life. Cultivate the good ones. Listen to them and become a better leader. I hope this series has helped you with that.